Hey, thanks again for listening or watching the Kingdom Mentor podcast. I'm Teresa Croft. It's all about your voice and all about your voice surviving trauma. I'm so excited to bring my guest up to you, Ryan Brady. I'm going to bring up and say, hey. Ryan and I met at a mastermind, and it was so funny, Ryan. I was sitting across from him, and he was talking to a brilliant lady, and I kept thinking he was saying TikTok. So after the breakfast was over, I went up to him. I said, TikTok? And he said, no, TED Talk. And then he proceeded to be just so gracious and sharing his story. And we sat down. I tried to do an interview. And let me tell you what, this young man has a story of hope in the midst of things you have no control of, trauma and tragedy. So please help me welcome Ryan Brady. Hey, Ryan, good to see you, man.
Hey Teresa, good to chat again. I think it feels like it's been so long since that mastermind, but it's only been
Yeah.
what, like a month?
So yeah, isn't that funny how time goes? And yeah, that was a great one. We were both at Build Your Brand Live AI Mastermind with Jen Gottlieb and our wonderful husband Chris Winfield. So we've got definitely common interests of
Yeah,
how to expand people's voices and use AI. And but that's not why we're going to begin talking because Ryan shared a story about his TED Talk experience. But before we go into that TED Talk experience, just give us a little bit of background, Ryan. Where you come from, and you can lead up.
sure,
Rather than
sure. I am originally from Northern California, the Bay Area to be exact. Um, I grew up there, kind of in the bubble of what was normal,
yeah,
um, and got used to that. Everything always been, taken care of for me, just the typical suburb, upper middle class type family.
yeah,
Um, and then I got used to that, and I trusted in that bubble a little bit too much.
wow,
And then it was the moment that I really trusted in that bubble. Like, oh, nothing bad can happen to me. All that stuff that's only in the movies. That's not real. Um, well, can I dive into that yet, or do you want me
go
to slow
for it.
down there?
Yeah,
Okay,
no,
cool,
go
cool,
for it.
cool.
That's you're setting the stage for that very well. So go for it.
Sure. So it was August 30th, 2017, and I was driving to school with my little brother. I was 17, he was 15. It was my senior year of high school, his sophomore year. And like a, you know, dumb teenager, we all have those moments. For me, I was speeding. It was speed limit was 25 miles per hour. I was going 39. And my younger brother, 15 at the time, he tells me, "Hey Ryan, I think you should slow down." I say, "Oh no, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We're gonna be okay. We'll be fine." And then right as we go around the next turn, this is like 20 seconds after he says that, there's a construction truck that's driving over the line in the middle of the road. And if I hit the brakes in that moment, I know I'm gonna kill the truck driver, kill myself, and kill my little brother, kill my younger brother. So anything, literally anything, seemed better than that. So I turn to the right to avoid that truck, and we go off an 80-foot cliff. Car flips 6 times going down, um, and there was no road to turn into. It was just the cliff. But
Wow.
literally anything seemed better than the other option, right? I'm at the bottom of the cliff. I'm unconscious. I owe my life to my little brother. My arm was bleeding out. He was courageous enough and brave enough to, put his hands on my arm and stop me from bleeding.
Wow.
And fortunately, physically, he was all right.
Yeah,
Of course, he remembers the experience very vividly, whereas it's a lot hazier in my head
right.
from the moment I made that decision. And me just sitting 1 foot from him, him being in the passenger seat, me being in the driver's seat. I break my neck, my wrist, my
Mm.
elbow, my collarbone, my back, and I have what's called a TBI, traumatic brain injury.
Wow.
I'm in a coma for a week.
Wow.
I wake up from the coma, and TBIs are all like fingerprints in the sense they're all totally unique.
Okay.
And for me, mine affected me in a very interesting way, which was I woke up having forgotten. So the way the doctors explained it to me,
Yeah.
my brain injury was in my, and I might be butchering this, but it was in the gray matter of my brain, which they
Sure.
explain it as there's the dark matter in your brain and there's the gray matter. The dark matter is like the storage, and the gray matter is like the wires that connect the storage. And they said, Ryan, it's like your gray matter, the wires, they just got all crumpled up and split and broke and those kinds of things. So I woke up from the coma and it was very difficult for me to access my long-term memory. So I
Wow.
woke up and I forgot how to speak English and I'd
Oh,
forgotten how to walk. So I woke up from the coma. I could understand English totally fine, which is really interesting, but I could
yeah.
only speak. I couldn't produce it. It's like
Wow.
a disconnect in the brain there. And that was interesting. And my parents don't speak Spanish, but I woke up from the coma only able to speak in Spanish, which was
No,
interesting.
that's
Yeah,
fascinating. If
it
I
was really
may interject something, you really
funny.
did
Yeah,
take a bullet for your brother. Because I think I saw the picture of your wreck,
yeah.
and you know he has the trauma of dealing with that. But
Sure.
no doubt about it, you took a bullet for your brother. So what's it called? Your brain injury is called something. What's it called again?
The what do you mean?
The label that I hate to say labels, but you're a survivor of
A TBI. It's just an acronym. Yeah, traumatic brain injury, TBI.
traumatic brain injury. Yeah. So
Yeah, I did it to myself. I'm not a victim of it. It was a
okay,
situation I completely put myself in.
yeah,
So
me too.
no victim of that. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't fear a victim. That's pretty awesome to say that because you could truly rise up in that mentality. So
100%.
you woke up speaking Spanish. So did you have to
Right.
learn the English language all over again, or over time did it come back?
Great question. So because I had lived in Mexico for like a 2-month program the summer before to
Okay.
compensate for my long-term memory not being able to be accessed, it pulled my short-term memory, right? And for me, that was speaking in Spanish. And it was not, fluent whatsoever, but it was good enough that I could communicate in it.
Wow.
Um, and the recovery of English was a mix of therapy, in inpatient in actual recovery centers, or therapy centers, and outpatient as well. So they called it speech therapy. When I really looked at them, I was like, okay, it's speech, but it's more than that. It's like cognitive therapy, really. It's like they would, help
Wow.
you with your pronunciation, help you like hold up a this. Say, what do you call this? And I don't know what that's called. That's a water holder. That's like those kinds of things that
Unbelievable.
it didn't click for me, right? So it was a mix of both. It was teaching as well as the brain recovering.
So you were 17 when this happened. How old are you now?
I'm 23 now.
So in those years, has this been like? I mean, you're an ambitious young man. I mean, we're talking. This guy's gone for a TED talk. Okay, we'll talk about that in a sec. But
Sure.
how was your? What was the source of you to continue to push yourself and rise out of that condition? Because you could have stayed there as a victim, but I do not see
100%.
you talking to a victim here.
Sure. So, and this is really interesting because kind of gets into the source, right, of that kind of ambition, and it even gets me to think, right, because I think of when I was in it recovering. I think it was a combination of two things. One, it was because I'd forgotten what I was used to and the kind of narratives that I was used to, the long-term memory. I thought I was on a vacation. I thought, oh, I'm on a 3-week vacation
Bless you.
away from school, and it was nice because I mean, in my head at least, objectively, there was people were bringing me in how like breakfast in bed every day, which I was like, wow, this is an amazing hotel.
Amazing.
Um, there was always a nurse with me, and so because I had forgotten what was normal, it was almost like this was no big deal. There wasn't anything that was new with it. It wasn't nearly the significance it would have had if I was continued, my previous thought patterns, right? So I think that was one thing, but also my mom actually mentioned this to me, and I started thinking about it. I was like, wow, she was right. There was not a single moment in the entire from the point that it happened to the recovery that I complained. Not a
Oh,
single point.
that's so cool.
And I think so. It gets into the question of how much of that was because I forgot what was normal, and how much of that was just my previous, I guess, way of thinking. So I couldn't balance that for you. I don't know the answer to that question. It's kind of a mix of both, and I still search for the answer to that question. Is where does that ambition come from going through that? But I think after going through that and recovering, where it kind of sits with me was it, really affirms the belief that everything happens for a reason. And I believe that. And when I tell that to certain people, I get interesting reactions because everybody thinks has a different opinion on that, right? But my
No,
perspective is everything happens for a reason. You get to choose the reason, and
exactly.
that's where the free will comes in.
Yeah.
Um,
Can I
and
give you
so,
what I think that was?
please, absolutely,
I think it was lined in your DNA from birth that you
interesting,
would be a go-getter. And the
interesting.
fact that you had this tragedy, you turned that tragedy and you're turning it into triumph. So I really believe, I believe in God. I really believe that sometimes you're just lying for it. And sometimes
Mm,
you have to have the crash. Yours was a little
right,
crash. Other people have to have the crash to really turn them around. It might be a crash in a
mm,
marriage. It might be a crash in a death somewhere.
right.
I don't think, I think, I don't want to get into God to cause that. God allows things, but the beautiful thing, Ryan, is you're amazing that you were able to come through this with the dogged determination. So I
Mm.
think parents did a great job of raising you too. Yeah, life was carefree, but I bet you appreciate life every single
Oh
day.
yeah.
It's hard, do you not?
Oh, 100%. And I think you bring up something really interesting there, which was before this happened, I was an unmotivated, I
Oh,
was stoner, I was, into all that kind of lifestyle. It was where's the next place I can, party this next weekend, get high this next weekend. That was my life when I was, 17 years old. And I think the way I see this was the universe, God, higher power, source, whatever you call it. It's like, hey, kid, like you have so much potential. Like
yeah.
you're just throwing it in the trash. Like
It
we
was
gotta
lying,
smack.
it was lying dormant underneath
Mm,
all that
right,
stuff.
right.
And I'm not
And so
saying
I
that
think,
causes crashes, but the way you're coming out of
mm,
it does show underneath the drugs, underneath the just where's the next
mm,
party was the real you. And
100%.
so um, take us back to the next last 2 years. How have you? Go ahead and lead up to your TED Talk. How did you start to
Sure.
continue to rise up? I see a very determined, talented young man who's only 23. I can only imagine the stages and the places you're going to speak into people's lives because of the way you handled this. So let's take the last couple of years. Where have you been? What's been going on?
Sure. So it was, I guess I'll start after the accident, right? So a few years after, about 2 years after, I was working as a like a barista, like a person that
Oh,
runs the cashier at a coffee shop. This was in Northern California at the time,
okay.
and someone came up to me and they had heard me taking an order for someone in Spanish, and they asked, "Well, how do you speak Spanish?"
That's amazing.
And this guy, I told him the story that I kind of just told you,
Right.
waking up, only able to speak it, and it really helping me actually recover, and then me really diving deeper into that. And he said, this was the first time I'd ever heard someone say this to me, and it just was a paradigm shift. Was you got to give a TED talk, and I was
Yeah,
like, what?
that's good.
Interesting. And I thought that's the first person I ever kind of recognized that this idea, this story could turn into something like that. And it was an
Wow.
interesting reframe for me. And then about I went back to university in Madrid after working that summer as a barista, and I had gotten accepted to a program for the following year that didn't accept the credits in the first year that I was going to do.
Okay.
So in my head it was my grades don't matter, credits aren't going to transfer, and it was kind of that dilemma, that dichotomy, and I didn't explain it to my family well enough that when I came back to visit for Thanksgiving that year, I remember my mom asked me, Ryan, how are your grades?
Uh-huh.
And I'm the firstborn child of three boys, and so firstborns, we got to break those barriers
Yeah.
for the parents. And I said, oh, I'm failing all my classes. And as any mother can probably understand, you tell your kid when they say that, especially if you don't know the context, it's like, what's going on? What are you doing? You're a failure. Blah blah blah. And I left Thanksgiving that year. I want to do something so big, so great, where she will understand that I'm working really hard and so forth, right? And that was when I went back and dove into I want to do a TED talk. because
Wow.
that's something that was so big that would get her to understand I'm doing something, big with my life. I'm not wasting it.
Wow.
And so I do owe, a lot to my mom for putting that pressure on me. And even though she doesn't realize it, that really helped me when she did that. So
Okay.
I go back in January, and I think, okay, I'm gonna write the script for my TED Talk. I take about a year, 8 months to write the script. I hire a script writer to work with me, and I write the entire script for this TED Talk that I think is a TED Talk, but it wasn't. Um, and I send it to the TEDx organizer of my hometown, which was TEDx Marin,
Okay.
which is in Northern California.
Right.
And the guy's name is Bob Ayers, was the organizer at the time. I'm not sure if he still is,
Yeah.
but I get an email back from him. It says, Ryan, great script, but this is not a TED Talk. I think, oh crap. Like I just wasted a year of my life writing a script
Why was it not a TED Talk?
because it was focused on a story, not an idea worth spreading. Because the idea that I had pitched to him was learning from life's events as opposed to the school system. And of course, for anybody that's, years out of college, you kind of figure that out yourself and it becomes
Yeah.
common knowledge.
Okay.
So at the time, I thought it was a TED idea worth spreading. I thought it was new, it was cutting edge, but it wasn't. I didn't realize
Yes.
it at the time.
Yeah.
And so I gave up. I
Yeah.
got that message from him and thought, oh, okay, I'm done. I thought you could only apply to the TED Talk in your hometown, and I just quit.
Wow.
Then I had worked on another project, which was a co-living incubator for student entrepreneurs to kind of live in an environment where they could basically help them get the success they were looking for.
Okay.
And one of the students we were helping, through this method that we taught, he got his dream internship at Formula One, which was he's from France, and we were in Madrid at the time, and he got his internship there. And I thought, wait, if he could do this, why
Yeah.
don't I talk to other TEDx speakers and see what I can learn from talking to them? And so I
Wow.
started messaging people on LinkedIn that were TEDx speakers because I figured if anybody knows how to get a TED Talk, who would
Yeah.
know? Probably someone that's given a TED Talk, right?
Yeah.
And I talked to this one guy, his name is Matt Stewart, and this one conversation is one that absolutely changed my life. He had done 3 TED Talks, and he asked me, Ryan, how many do you think I applied to? And Matt, he's from Vancouver, I think it was Canada, or Alberta, I'm not sure which, but he's
Okay.
Canadian. Super awesome guy. And I said, well, Matt, you've done 3, so obviously you've only applied to 3. He said, no, Ryan, I've
Oh,
applied to 300.
wow.
And I was just like, oh my gosh. And I
Well,
gave up at 1, right?
yeah. Wow.
And just the paradigm shift in that moment was huge for me because I thought, okay, I applied to 1, got that, I didn't give up. When this guy applied to 300 and got 3, okay, what if I applied to 100 more? What would happen with that? And then I, was like, okay, game on, let's do this. And I applied to 15 more through different mechanisms,
Right.
meaning the website, like the TEDx events website, LinkedIn, and so forth. Um, Ended up getting 2 of the 15 that I applied to. The first one was in Madrid. The second one was in England, a place called Lincoln, England, Lincolnshire is I think how you pronounce it. Um, and after doing those 2, um, I put both of them on my LinkedIn account.
Okay.
And enough people started messaging me saying, hey, can you help me get a TED Talk? I'm a coach, I'm an author, I'm a speaker, I'm a business owner. Can you help me? And
Wow.
I was just kind of ignoring them at first, but then I got enough messages that I thought, okay, let me help one person do this. See if
Whoa.
it works. See if I'm just lucky and what worked for me was just for me, or if
Yeah.
I can help other people do this. And the first person I worked with, his name is Justin Rogers, and we worked together for about 1 month. And he gave me a month of his coaching, and I wanted to reciprocate the value, and I helped him, get his TED Talk. And for him, he applied to 1 and got accepted to 1,
Whoa.
and that was crazy. And so I thought, okay, this works.
Yeah.
Um, Let me see what I can do with this. And I didn't really put effort into it. I thought if it comes, it comes. Whatever happens, happens. I was thinking about it much more passively.
Yeah.
Then I was working and still am today working for a company called Digital Prodigy with a double E and not a Y. And I had a call that came in from my LinkedIn profile that someone had seen my TED Talk, came to me to talk about an app idea they had, but then said, Ryan, I know you're here to talk about app development and marketing services, but the real reason I want to talk to you is see if you can help me get a TED Talk.
Oh
And I'm
my
like, oh
God.
my gosh, okay.
So cool.
I know, right? And in that moment, I think I'm here to like we're here to talk about apps and the app ID you have and building that for you. The helping you get a TED Talk is another call. It's a 30-minute call. I do that. It's separate from Digital Prodigy, what we're doing here. But we could talk about that if that would make sense for you. He said, yeah, how much would I owe you? And in my head, I'm thinking, oh gosh, I don't really want to do this. I don't really want to talk to this guy about how to help him get a TED Talk. I
So
thought just pick a price in my
did you jack it up so he wouldn't? It would be too much.
exactly. And so I thought, what's the highest price I can say for a 30-minute call this guy will say no to? And I thought, oh my gosh, you know what? This will be $150 for that 30-minute call. And in my head, I'm thinking he's going to say, no way, whatever. He says, okay, cool. Where do I send the PayPal link? Or where do I send the payment? I said, here's the PayPal link. Let's go. And in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Someone's willing to pay $150 for a 30-minute call. This is crazy.
I
And
love
then from there, I started thinking, okay, maybe there's something to this.
this.
Maybe I can help people with this, right?
Yeah.
And then I was doing a lot of different jobs at the same time, building different businesses and working a few different contract gigs. I was very distracted, kind of like the I heard someone say this in a previous talk. He called it pizza brain, where if you have your zone of focus, if you slice that with everything, it becomes a pizza, right? And then you're doing so many different things at the same time, and each thing takes away from the energy you can give to that one thing.
I get that totally.
Right. And so I went to this event. This was a Ryan Pineda event in September in Vegas, and we were at the Mandalay Bay Hotel.
Great.
And a guy, you might be familiar with him, a guy named Alex Ramosi spoke on stage that day.
Yeah.
And he talked about leverage and how and this was one thing he said. One day I was working 9 businesses. I was doing, dentistry office, marketing for chiropractors. I had an agency here. I was doing this. And his wife, Layla, said, hey, Alex, you seem really stressed. What if you were to take all the energy you're doing with all these things and put it into one thing?
Yeah.
And in that moment, he said, well, that would be easy. That would be $1 million a month, no problem. And she said, well, have you thought of doing that? And he's like, in that moment, he's like, oh my gosh, why am I doing 9 different businesses at the same time when I could just do one and it could be incredibly successful with all this energy in one place?
Yeah.
And so he told that story and it just kind of clicked for me, which was I'm doing all of these other businesses. I'm helping people get internships. I'm trying to become a wholesaler of real estate. I'm trying to work this contract gig. I'm trying to sell mobile app services. And it was so many things that were in the way. And I realized, wait, what would happen if I just picked the one thing that people are already reaching out to me on LinkedIn to help them with? I have all these warm inbound leads that people are looking for help. Why don't I just work with them? Why isn't that what I do?
Yeah.
And that was the moment that I made the decision, okay, I'm gonna work with this. And it was funny because I was leaving the event that day after Mosey spoke, and I went to the bathroom, and everybody else kind of had left. I leave the bathroom, and I'm walking out of the Mandalay Bay Hotel in Vegas, and I turn around and I see 2 people walking behind me with some other people, and I don't think anything of it. But then I turn around again, like, wait, is that Alex and Layla? Wait. And then I turn around again, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's Alex and Layla. And I go up to them and I say, thank you so much for this amazing experience and this knowledge you share on stage. It was really impactful. Could I get a photo with you?
Yeah.
And what he said, that was a pivotal moment for me, which was, I appreciate the sentiment. And he was very genuine about this. I could tell he did genuinely appreciate it. I appreciate the sentiment, but if I were to take a photo with you, if we were to take a photo with you, we get a line of people trying to take a photo with us, and we unfortunately can't do that. I said,
yeah.
And I totally understood where they're coming from. But that as motivation, I was like, the next time I talk to this guy, it's going to be a business conversation, not a fanboy kind of conversation. It was such good motivation.
Yeah.
And so I sat down at the food court at the Mandalay Bay Hotel right after that happened, and I got to work. And I thought, okay, I'm going to build a course. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. How can I help these people that are looking to get TED Talks?
That's so good.
And I started thinking about building a course, doing research on how to do that. And what I realized was the biggest mistake course creators make is they make a course on the one way that it worked for them and how it works. They think that will work for everyone, but it doesn't.
Nope.
Right?
I'm now, so I totally get what you're saying.
Right.
Really good stuff here.
And so Alex said something on stage that I remembered when I was sitting at that food court that day, which was a lot of people start with the do-it-yourself,
Mm-hmm.
service or product. Then they move into the done with you, normally group coaching. Then they move into the done for you, the highest ticket, highest fulfillment, lowest effort for the client type offer, right?
Right.
What he explained was what you should be doing is the reverse.
That's
You
right.
start with the done for you, the highest ticket. Then once you get that down, then you move into the done with you, the group stuff. Then once you're good at the group stuff, then you build the done, do it yourself.
I understand.
And
That's so good.
right. And
That's so good.
so that was when I realized, okay, I'm gonna, instead of building a course, I'm going to, do this kind of framework. And we ended up doing was, we actually started with the done for you. So it didn't even follow exactly what he said.
Okay.
We started with the done for you, and when I say we, that was me. But
Was that done for you? Is that one on one with you?
yeah, so the done for you is one of the ones we do now. But at the time we did the done with you. And this
Okay.
was a cohort of 3 business owners, and we helped them come up with their idea, helped them build their application, and then we taught them how to apply themselves. So
Wow.
it took about 6 months. They learned how, they found their idea, built their application, knew how
Yeah.
to apply themselves, and they were. But they came to me and they said, Ryan, thank you so much. This is great. But we're business owners.
Yeah.
One thing we don't have an abundance of is time,
Right.
right? And I think any business owner, listening to you talk right now understands
Yeah.
that's right. That hits with me. And so I thought, okay, what can we do? And they said, Ryan, can we just pay you guys to do all the applications for us? And that was when we realized, wait, yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
And that was when we pivoted our offer to it brought us to the highest, highest ticket,
Yeah.
highest fulfillment, which
Yeah.
was the done for you
So,
offer. And that was pretty cool. And so that was when we pivoted the offer, and um, now we work with people like the Build Your Brand Live event. I went up to Dr. Alok, Dr. Rewire, and
yeah.
said, hey, have
You're
you
right.
thought of giving a TED talk? Do you have any
Yeah.
friends that would do it? He said, I have friends that I can set you up with, but I want you to get me a TED talk first before I start referring you my buddies. I said, okay, cool, let's start. And now Dr. Rewire and I are working together to make
So
that happen for him, right?
good.
And so
Now
it's just very cool, the
I
kind
got
of
to
client that we get to work
backpedal.
with.
I got to backpedal on you.
Shoot.
You're listening to brilliance, but I want you to know, as a speaker, you can have a rough go and
Oh, yeah.
still be authentic and come out of the other end. So tell us what happened. Was that your very first TED talk when you
Sure. Yeah.
got?
Great.
Yeah,
Great question.
because this sounds all great, and someone's thinking, "Oh yeah, but I can't do that." But Ryan is coming from a place where he didn't give up. He's live on stage, and what happens?
Sure. Great question. So, once you get accepted to a TED Talk, they pair you with a script writer, and the person helps you write their script. Then they pair you with a coach to work on the actual memorizing the script that they help you write.
Uh-huh.
So I had my entire script written. It was 5 pages, 12 minutes more or less of speaking when I timed it at the time. And on the day of the first TED Talk, I'm sitting in stage watching the people go before me,
Okay.
and I'm so nervous. Like my heart is beating. I was like,
Yeah, I
I
can
was
imagine.
so much anxiety in the moment. Like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, I'm about to give a TED Talk. This is crazy.
So good.
And so I have the entire script memorized to a T.
That's good. Yeah.
And I get up on stage and I say the first 2 words of my script.
Okay.
Then I go blank.
Wow.
I forget the entire 5 pages that I had memorized. And
I saw
in
it.
that,
You recovered brilliantly, but I
thank
can
you, thank you.
then what
And
happened? It's like the real authentic you just
sure, right.
right on a flower.
And so in that moment, it was,
Now,
I
what
guess
were
the
you
thought,
thinking? What were you
right.
thinking at that moment?
That in that moment, I'm standing on stage looking up at everyone in the audience. And I think there was something psychological with the audience being above me and me looking up at them as opposed to looking down or
Yeah.
looking, plateau.
Okay.
Um, but it was, oh my gosh, just get off stage. If you get off stage now, Ryan, nobody will know. The TED Talk will never go online. Nobody will see it. It'll be fine. Just go,
Yeah.
just step off. But then the other side of me was saying, you worked a year and a half, 2 years to
Yeah.
get here.
Yeah.
What would you say to yourself if you were to get off stage now and waste the opportunity that you worked your ass off to get to for 2 years?
So
I
good.
thought, all right, if you're gonna fail, fail big. And
Yeah.
I like just stepped into it with a new level of confidence, which was like,
Yeah.
all right, let's do this. It
It's,
was kind of a super authentic
yeah.
step into it. But so the entire TED Talk was raw, authentic, wasn't scripted, but it was easier that way, which was
Yeah.
interesting. It surprised me because it was
Well, you were
it's like
authentic. There was no,
right,
in some ways, I think you can have a script and still be authentic, but
right,
this stripped you of your crutch. So the real you, and based on if you could find it on YouTube, I mean, he got comment after comment after comment,
mm,
people leaning in and saying, "Oh, thank you for you. I get you,"
mm,
or that's what you want is experience.
100%.
I mean, that's just beautiful. I mean, granted, I believe in preparation and everything, but there's something about finding a way for that authenticity to come
Mm,
out. So, what would you say? Let's say there's someone listening right now. We got a few people listening, and they'll listen to it
mm,
in the podcast, and they're like, "This is interesting." I mean, it's interesting to me too. Someone told me I need to do a TED talk, but I don't want to be distracted from what I'm doing now. But let's pretend like it's me. What would be the stages that you and your company or you
sure.
yourself? What would be the stages? I mean, you don't
Great
have to
question.
mention exactly, just the overall, because
Yeah,
I'm not
sure.
going to
So
know.
it it kind of breaks into at
Yeah.
least the breaks into two main parts.
Okay.
First is acquiring the TED Talk, then it's preparing for it and giving it. The first part is you come up with your idea we're spreading, and we help you with that because we figured out the framework that works best to come up with your TED Talk. It worked for me for my first time, then I
Okay.
tried with my second and it worked. Then I helped Justin, and then
Yeah.
I was like, okay, this framework works. So we
Yeah.
help you with that framework, come up with the idea, what actually qualifies as an idea worth spreading. Then we actually build your application with you.
Okay.
So we took all the applications that we could find. There's about 1,800 TED Talks that we could find links to at the time.
Yeah.
Scraped the applications, built an application that kind of covers everything that the majority would ask.
That's so
So
good.
we fill that out with you, answer the questions with you. Then once we have that, then we go and we do two things. So what we started doing was applying for you until you get accepted. That was what
Okay.
we started doing.
Right.
But now we do almost a hybrid where we thought, okay, and this is from one thing Jen said, which is focus on what you're best at.
In Gottlieb, yes.
What we started with doing was building relationships with all of the TEDx organizers. And
Ooh,
almost
good man.
instead of putting up an application link and hoping the right person applies, it's now, hey, Ryan, we want this kind of person with this kind of idea in this sector, in this niche, in this demographic, talking at our talk in 8 to 12 months. Now we can go back and find that person.
That's so
So
good. Wow.
that's once we have the application of the person, we know who they are, what they're looking to talk on, the niche they're looking to speak on, then we can go get them the actual TED Talk, whether
Yeah,
that's through application or we are a conversation we had with one of our organizers.
that's so
Then
good.
once you're accepted, you get into the second part, and that's when you're paired with someone from TED. They actually help you write your script. So that was a big narrative with one of my clients I'm working with right now. He was actually at Build Your Brand Live as well.
Yeah,
He said, "Yeah, it was really scary to me. I thought I had to have the whole script done when I applied, and I was really nervous." I was like, "No,
that's fascinating.
you,
Yeah, they
you don't
help
need
you.
the script.
Yeah,
Yeah, you get accepted for your idea, and then a few questions that you answer in the application. Once
wow,
you're accepted on that, then you actually build the
that's
script
good.
with the
That's
coach."
that's really cool to hear personally. That's just that's awesome. So they control really what they're looking for. They know what's going to be good and what's going to be like a Brene Brown and what's not. I
Mm,
mean,
right.
well, that's awesome to hear. So now let me ask you: your leveraging, is that your main business, or do you still have a few other streams of income? I'm just curious.
Sure. Yeah. So, speaking to expand is one of the. I would say it is my main business. But I'm kind of subject to the pizza brain thing still as well, except it's
Yeah, yeah,
instead of hoping stuff will work out, it's more
yeah.
controlled. So
I understand
speaking
that.
there's speaking to expand. We help people get TED Talks and leverage those TED Talks. Um,
That's great.
Also now we help them get on podcasts and then get paid speaking gigs after they've done their TED Talk or before if they're looking for that.
That is so good. Yeah.
Then we have Digital Prodigy, which builds mobile apps for people, custom mobile apps, as well as offers a platform for people to build apps themselves, not knowing how to code or anything. And me and my business partner with Digital Prodigy, Dinah Redhouse, we had so many conversations with awesome app ideas that people had that we kind of got used to and learned how to figure out what's a good app idea and what's not. And we had this one idea that we ended up building ourselves, and it's called
Nice.
Ubi. And we have the
Nice.
proof of concept app up on the App Store right now. But we're actually going to an event in 3 days called Culture 50 in Miami 2023 to look to our first. We're raising our first round, and
Nice.
it's a very cool app. I'm not sure how much I can disclose about it yet, but it's
As I'm listening to you, what I love that you have come to understand is investing in yourself and going to some conferences. Yeah, you learn something, but you also bump into the right people. I mean, it just happens. I mean, I don't know how to explain it, but that is just like, I mean, to think that you talk to Dr. We call him Dr. Rewire. I don't know what I have his book around here. He's
his name's Alok Trivedi.
Thank you. I don't want to do him disgrace, but I mean, that is brilliant. I mean, I'm really, really excited to hear someone so young. And I understand leverage. I came back, I went to a conference before Build Your Brand, and then I went to Build Your Brand. And in the journey from that first conference to Build Your Brand, I had made this decision that I need to leverage. It's just not my speaking business. So I leveraged with an alliance that teaches for women. It's just for women. It teaches personal development, professional development, leadership, and speaking with an opportunity for residual income. So when you're talking about speaking, if there's a woman out there and saying, I can't do a TED talk, what I love about our Speaker Academy, Ryan, is it's got to be one of the safest place just to learn the basics of speaking, of being on a stage. And that's what I went through in October. And I loved it. The hardest part was keeping it under 10 minutes. So that was my struggle personally. Otherwise, I wanted to throw up my whole life on the stage. But the idea that you get them stage, then they got that time to work on their speech. And how much time is it to where they get a stage and they work with TED Talk? How much time is there for them to craft the talk and get used to being on stage? I was just curious.
Sure. So TED Talks, TEDx Talks, that is, they normally open up their talks for applications 6 to 8 months prior to the talk being given.
Okay.
So you get accepted. Normally you have 3 months to prepare. My first one was a time crunch because COVID pushed out the date. So it was only a month to prepare and all that kind of stuff after being accepted.
Yeah.
But normally it's about 3 months. Is how long you'll have to actually work with the coaching team that TED provides you with.
I know someone in my mastermind small group was got on TED Talk. I think she had a brain injury too. But I don't, someone can be listening right now, and my target market is women, but you want to get a TED Talk and then have a safe place to learn, please get in touch with me. Get in touch with Ryan first. But I love to see, that's my heart. I'm a speaker. I want to help people release their voices. Gone through crud, gone through trauma like you, and then out of that you find you're no longer voiceless. You find your voice, and then you get to speak to the person you were. So I'm sure you get to speak to the people you once were, meaning you can speak to anyone who's gone through a trauma. It doesn't have to be a callback. I mean, the ability for you to have empathy and compassion. And I think that's what came through in your TED Talk where you went blank. I really think the real Ryan just stepped up there with all his empathy and all the greatness that God put in you. So this has been awesome. So how can people get in touch with you?
Sure.
Like, I think I want to check this out. So what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
First, I would say one thing I want to leave you with and leave everyone with that I think if I would have known this, it would have changed everything for me. I genuinely believe every person has a TED idea worth spreading in them. You just need a little bit of help finding it. Everybody has one.
That gave me chills. Oof.
And so, if you want to have a conversation with me about that, I would say the two best places you could find me. One would be on Instagram. I haven't really put much content out there on my Instagram, but that works to contact me. Ryan.w.brady.
Right. I
That's
did
my
that.
Instagram account.
Ryan,
And then
yeah, because I had to find you on Instagram, so that was good. Okay. Say
and
that.
then
Say your Instagram handle again.
Ryan Ryan dot W dot Brady Brady.
Yeah.
And then my LinkedIn account works as well. I'm definitely more active on LinkedIn for business. I've put a lot more time into that, but I am working on growing the Instagram page and making it so it actually has valuable content. Because right now there's nothing.
Yeah, we'll
Um,
put that on the show notes so that they can reach you at
sure.
Instagram or LinkedIn. So, wow. Well, I appreciate you taking the time and really, you just provided so much value for our audience. So, thank you,
Glad.
Ryan. I'm going to be watching you, maybe a bump up in another conference because it's just great to me. I'm so glad I bumped into you. And I'm thinking you're talking
Yeah.
TikTok and you were talking TED Talk. That's just too cool. So, all right, you are listening to the Kingdom Mentor podcast. I'm Teresa Croft. Please, hey, this is value. Leave a review. You can also go to ratethispodcast.com. And thanks for listening to the Kingdom Mentor podcast.